KelloGoCello.com.
Good morning. Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. Nice to have you along this morning.
On the air.
I love the Greg Belfrage Show.
Lots of things to talk about actually today.
And keeping us informed.
You sound a little taller. Radio.
Dispensing a daily dose of common sense. No prescription required.
Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans play to win all the time.
Here we
I
go.
don't believe in a no-win scenario.
Good morning, my friend. The marketplace of ideas is open. Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show, Tuesday, April 1st. Yeah, be on your lookout today. It's April 1st. Look out for those jokers. No jokes here this morning. It may seem I'm the only joke you're going to encounter here this morning. All right. Big stories today. You've got Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who has resigned from the House Freedom Caucus. And there apparently she is saying that the mutual respect in the House Freedom Caucus was shattered. And she said, I have consistently supported each of you, even in moments of disagreement, honoring the mutual respect that has guided our caucus. That respect, however, was shattered last week. She has she wanted to have a chamber-wide vote on legislation that would give new mothers and fathers in Congress, if they choose, they would be able to vote by proxy. So in other words, let's say you have a new mother or father in Congress. They're not there, actually not there to cast their vote, right? They could vote via proxy. And she said this was a modest, family-centered proposal. Yet a small group among us threatened the speaker, vowing to, this is Luna saying, a small group of us threatened the speaker, vowing to halt floor proceedings indefinitely, regardless of the legislation at stake, including the president's agenda, unless the speaker altered the rules to block my discharge position. And she said she can no longer be a part of the House Freedom Caucus. She says, you have a select few operating outside its guidelines, misusing its name, broker backroom deals that undermine its core values, and you get a lot of pushback. Polite, I think, pushback on this. In fact, House Speaker Mike Johnson said he believes this proxy voting unconstitutional. That's the reason why you've got members who won't support it. They believe it's unconstitutional. That you cannot have this voting by proxy. You've got to be present. You've got to be there to cast your ballot. You can't vote via proxy. And Speaker Johnson said, we addressed this as a conference this morning. He said a handful of our colleagues got behind the effort. And look, I'm a father. I'm pro-family. Here's the problem. If you create a proxy vote opportunity just for young parents, mothers and fathers in those situations, then where is the limiting principle? In other words, then you start building on it. Well, who else? Now is it those who, physically unable to get in and vote? I mean, you start creating reasons as to why people cannot be there to vote. Once you start doing that, the reasons just compound. And I think, all you have to do is look at history, and that's what we've seen. Representative Chip Roy of Texas said, respectfully to my friend, he said this rule, and he put in parentheses, this unconstitutional rule would ultimately not be limited to moms, cancer patients, dads, worst of all, people who lazily abuse it, voting from boats. She leaves and then he goes on to say she's leaving out that her discharge allows no amendments. We should show up to work/vote. How do you quibble with that? I have, she's resigned from the House Freedom Caucus over this. And this is it's a big story this morning, I think. And she's saying mutual respect was shattered. And I don't know what was said and who said what and what happened, but everything I'm hearing here from the speaker, everything I'm hearing from Representative Chip Roy, I mean, they are not at least speaking publicly in any way disrespectfully of her. So she has left the House Freedom Caucus because mutual respect was shattered. And again, that may well be true. She's someone I have had respect for. So you've got to believe that's the case. However, of the arguments that folks are making, you start making exceptions for not voting. Where does that stop? Also this morning, a lot of stories that are out there this morning. President Trump asked about the possibility of running for a third term. You know, that's been a big story here the last few days. And the president being asked about it. And he said he'd love to run against former President Barack Obama in a hypothetical third term run. And so it was Peter Ducey of Fox News who asked the question. And he said, I know it's hypothetical right now, but if you were allowed for some reason to run for a third term, is there a thought that the Democrats could try to run Barack Obama against you? And Trump said, I'd love that. I'd love that. That would be a good one. I'd like that. And no, people are asking me to run, and there's a whole story about running for a third term. I don't know. I never looked into it. They do say there's a way you can do it, but I don't know about that. So this is a little bit different, I think, than what he was saying maybe a couple of days ago regarding this, when he was asked by Kristen Welker. So now he's saying, and again, he's saying, he was pretty clear about this the other day, I think, that he's focused on what he's doing as president right now. He's focused on those things. And he wants to be focused on those things. Suggesting at least the other day that there may be a time to talk about this. Right now is not the time. And so he says he's not looked into the potential legal avenues, saying he has nearly 4 years left of his term. He's focused on doing a fantastic job, the president said. So he'd love to run against Barack Obama. And that's generating all kinds of headlines this morning. It's just amazing. Donald Trump has the ability. Have you ever seen anybody who's got the ability to generate headlines like Donald Trump? I mean, I love this story. It was a while ago. You may remember this. That he would say things on, I think he was still on X at that time. It was Twitter. He would say things on Twitter knowing that they would set folks off. So he would say things on Twitter, and then he would go watch television to see how long it would take before they picked up his comments. And it was just amazing. He was shocked, I think, at how fast the media would start responding to him. Donald Trump has always had that ability. He talks about something and boom, that's the news cycle. Also, you've got Democratic officials that are suing the Trump administration. This was last evening. They're challenging the president's executive order. This is the executive order that would impose citizenship requirements to register to vote. Also, he wants to open voter rolls to the Department of Government Efficiency. And here come the lawsuits. The Democratic National Committee, joined by the Democratic Governors Association, the Senate and House campaign committees, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, filed the lawsuit in U.S. District Court. And they said, the president does not get to dictate the rules of our elections. The executive order seeks to impose radical changes on how Americans register to vote, cast a ballot, participate in our democracy. Who's been making the radical changes there? Who's been behind? It's going to take us a lot of time to count votes, so we need longer. And who's been behind those efforts? You have to laugh at it. It just flies in the face of what you know to be true. So they're saying the president's action here threatening to disenfranchise lawful voters, none of which is legal. So, and this is pretty expected. So you've got nonprofits and the so-called, I'm going to put the nonprofits in quotation marks, nonprofits. Oh, nonprofits. Oh, here they are against Trump again. What a surprise. Who is it who's running the nonprofits? So they're suing over that. Also, President Trump signed an executive order yesterday targeting ticket resellers and bots to address the issue of inflated ticket prices, unfair practices in entertainment. He was joined by Kid Rock, who was at the White House yesterday. I am not seeing any reports about Bill Maher being there, because the big story is this executive order on ticket resellers. I must admit, curious how this went between, and there's nothing on Trump's True Social account yet. And because I thought that was to take place yesterday. We'll see. Anyway, the order directs agencies like the Federal Trade Commission to enforce the Better Online Ticket Sales Act, prohibits bots from reselling tickets at marked up prices. This is going to be good news for you. If you're a ticket buyer of any kind, I think that's good news for you. You get these bots going out, grabbing tickets and then reselling them to you at inflated prices. There is, I think for many of us, there's just something fundamentally wrong with that. So Kid Rock was there alongside the president during the signing, and he voiced his support. He talked about ongoing frustrations with these bots, and that, actually cutting artists and fans out of fair deals. Kid Rock said, I'd like to take my ticket price lower, but if I set my ticket prices low, these bots immediately eat them up and resell them for hundreds of dollars more. I'm just making these bad actors rich. He said, if Ticketmaster sells the ticket, they make 17 whatever percentage every time that ticket resells. They don't want to enforce the bot act because they're making more money off it. The artists don't see any of that money. I want the fans to have a fair ticket price. So how do you argue with that as a fan? If you want to go see these events, whoever it may be, you want to go see these events, should the bots be driving up ticket prices? And again, at the end of the day, I guess it's up to you. But you've got, as to whether or not you're going to pay it, I think a lot of us would say, well, no, man, I'm not going to pay these inflated prices. But what Kid Rock, at least what I'm hearing is he's saying he wants to give fans the opportunity to come and see him, right? And you got to appreciate that. Also, we've talked a lot about the trade wars. President has repeatedly referred to tomorrow, April 2nd, that's coming up tomorrow, is Liberation Day. This is when he rolls out a new set of tariffs, taxes on imports from other countries. And he says this is going to free the United States from a reliance on foreign goods. So he has said that he will impose reciprocal tariffs to match the duties that other countries charge U.S. products. So this begins tomorrow. And this is White House trade advisor Peter Navarro has been talking about this a lot over the course of the last few days. Navarro saying the tariffs could raise about $600 billion a year. And the president has talked about taxing the European Union, South Korea, Brazil, India, other countries through these tariffs. Yesterday, Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary, said the president had been presented with several proposals by his advisors, so he'll make a final decision. Also, part of that story is, are the tariffs on? Are they off? Donald Trump threatening the tariffs, and then the dates get delayed, and the markets are going nuts, man. The markets are going nuts. I mean, they're all showing, they don't know which way is up. So is he doing that too much? Back and forth, and then every time the market just lurches. I could not play the markets. I could not. I wouldn't have the staying power. Back and forth, and Trump, and right now, because he's really uncertain, I think, at times. I believe that he knows what he's going to do. But he will back and forth this a little bit, and the markets just react every time you see it, You really have got you need to have a spine made of steel, I think, to survive in the market today. So that's a big story. Also, there is a story about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. In his latest move, he's talking about a 60-day review of military combat arms standards. He wants to make sure that no exceptions are being made for female troops. What it boils down to is this: both men and women need to meet the same physical standards if they want to serve in combat. And this is what Hegseth is saying. So both men and women need to be held to the same physical standards if they're serving in combat roles. And Hegseth said, for too long, we've allowed standards to slip. We've had different standards for men and women serving in combat arms. He said that's not acceptable, and it changes right now. So and this goes on. You start getting into details, but he's saying, for ground combat, physical standards that must be met include the ability to carry heavy loads, endure prolonged physical exertion, and more. That's a big story this morning. So we talk about prices and, bots that are driving up ticket prices and so on. Also, there are some stories out there about streaming prices going up. And because of this, you got a lot of people who are going back to cable. A new survey shows 22% of former cord cutters have returned to cable. Nearly half of Americans say they've canceled at least one streaming service due to rising costs and platform overload. Some of the streaming services have raised prices multiple times. Others have not. So you got people going back to cable. Now that's intriguing to me. Would you go back to cable if you cut the cord? Because not everybody's cut the cord, obviously. But if you've cut the cord, would you ever go back? I don't know that I would. I really don't know that I would. I haven't had cable television now for several years, and I can't envision going back to cable. When it comes to streaming services, yes, their costs are going up, and you make a decision as to whether or not you want to pay for them. I think Katie and I, there's one she pays for, there's one that I pay for. I use the one she pays for. I don't think she uses the one that I pay for. But with a lot of streaming services, the free services work fine with me. Do I get to see everything? No. Do I need to see everything right now? No. I'm just not one of those folks. But streaming was once considered to be kind of the budget-friendly option, but we'll talk about it, I think, this morning. You've got this question has come up again. Doug Burgum saying, well, we certainly have room on Mount Rushmore for Donald Trump's head up there. There's room up on Mount Rushmore, and it's, oh, really? Do we have to have that debate again? Here we go again. And that's a look at the big stories this morning. Thanks for starting your day with the Greg Belfrage Show at 6:27. This hour of our show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month. Right now, cloudy skies, 37.
Ben Robbins, weekdays at 2. Callow, News Talk 1320, 107.
Mount Rushmore. Oh, man.
Sponsored by Tires. The Give You More Tire and Automotive Store.
When your home has a plumbing or air conditioning emergency, call the Hander Plumbing and HVAC 24 hours, 7 day a week. Experienced service team.
Be clear. If we wanted memorialize Donald Trump, I'm all in favor of that. Mount Rushmore, can we just stop having that conversation? That really is a piece of art that somebody else has done. You want to add, I mean, that would be like taking a famous painting and then, oh, we're going to add this to the painting. Can we stop having that conversation? That is just stupid to me.
The United States Army Field Band and Soldiers Chorus from Washington, D.C. will be presenting a free concert in Sioux Falls on Wednesday.
I'll get a grip on myself here.
7:30 p.m. at Washington Pavilion. For more information about this performance, visit washingtonpavilion.org. That's washingtonpavilion.org.
Emergencies strike at any time without warning. When they do, food disappears fast. That's why prepared Americans trust My Patriot Supply, the leader in long-term emergency food storage, to protect their family. For a limited time, order their best-selling 4-week emergency food supply and get 4 free 72-hour food kits. That's 12 extra days of food at no extra cost. That's nearly 2 weeks of extra food, free to keep your family secure, plus free shipping. Order by 3 p.m.
Oh, that coffee's going down well this morning.
2,000 calories per day of easy-to-prepare meals with a shelf life up to 25 years. These kits that have been rated 4.8 out of 5 stars by tens of thousands of folks like you. When the next crisis hits, be ready. Stock up now at MyPatriotSupply.com before this deal disappears. Go to MyPatriotSupply.com for your 4-week emergency food supply and 4 free extra food kits.
6:30, cloudy skies, 37 at Kello. Joe Bowman is on duty in the Kello.com News Center. Coming up, more charges being filed against the Sioux Falls woman accused of assisting her husband in the assault of another young woman. Also, Governor Roden announcing a new plan to help South Dakota homeowners pay lower property taxes. Joe will have details on those stories coming up. Then I'll run down stories trending this morning, all on the way.
Supreme Court election in Wisconsin determines if that court tilts left or right and could be considered an early referendum on President Trump and Elon Musk.
The race has brought in a record-breaking $90 million, at least $20 million from Elon Musk. Voters will also head to the polls in Florida to decide who will fill former Congressman Matt Gaetz and Mike Waltz's vacant seat.
Fox's Brooke Sinnott. Another survivor is found today. It's up to more than 2,700 bodies recovered from the rubble of Friday's earthquake in Burma.
Aid groups say there's an urgent need for shelter, food and water. The number confirmed dead is expected to rise, especially now the critical 72-hour window after the earthquake has passed. Across the border in Thailand, several dozen people are either confirmed or believed dead.
Fox's Jonathan Savage. The UN says 50 children and 2 teachers died in a preschool collapse in Burma. America's listening to Fox News.
Weather brought to you by Infinity Sedation Dentistry, Sioux Falls. They fix your teeth while you sleep.
Kello News Time, 6:31. I'm Joe Bowman in the Kello.com News Center. More charges are filed against the Sioux Falls woman accused of assisting her husband in the assault of another young woman. Amanda Huff is now facing domestic abuse and neglect of a disabled adult. Her husband, Kyle Huff, is accused of sexually assaulting the same woman repeatedly over the course of 5 years. The Huffs were arrested after a neighbor called Child Protective Services. Governor Larry Roden announced a new plan to help South Dakota homeowners pay lower property taxes. The Homeowner Tax Relief Program would allow counties to add a small sales tax of up to 0.5% to directly offset property taxes for homeowners in that county. Governor Roden says his plan makes more sense.
We had, I think, over 20 pieces of legislation dealing with property tax relief. In my view, the problem with most of those bills, they were proposing a statewide solution to a 5-county problem.
Roden will present his proposal to the legislature's Property Tax Relief Task Force, which was recently formed to study tax relief options. He says lawmakers are far more receptive to the idea.
I think it was kind of a relief to some of the legislators that I talked to that they had something they could address and have serious discussions so they're not floundering through the summer trying to come up with a concept that they can get behind.
The task force will work on the proposal throughout the summer and fall before the next legislative session. And Governor Larry Roden's veto of the bill that would have altered the process for citizens to propose amendments to the state constitution will stand. Yesterday in Pierre, the veto override passed in the state house, but the Senate was deadlocked in a 16-16 type vote. And officials over in Spink County are asking all attorney fees related to the fight against the CO2 pipeline project be paid by Summit Carbon Solutions. That's according to a recent filing from the Public Utilities Commission. The move comes after the ability to use eminent domain for the construction of dioxide pipelines was outlawed last month. Spink County Commission says legal fees have increased by tens of thousands of dollars in just the past month. From the Kello.com News Center, I'm Joe Bowman.
The news never stops. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
Excuse me.
A mix of rain and snow pushing to the northeast. Temperatures this afternoon climbing to the mid-40s. Southeast wind 20 to 40. Additional scattered rounds of showers, maybe a thunderstorm tonight. Lows in the mid to upper 30s. And then tomorrow, chances of rain, windy weather, high 45. West wind 20 to 35. From the Storm Center at Kibble-Land TV, I'm Brian Karstens.
Kello updates your world around the clock with Fox News. Tune in 4, 5, 6 times a day so you'll always know what's happening. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
When you think about some of America's former bedrock companies like Kodak, that should have ruled the digital camera market, or Sears, that was Amazon equivalent 100 years ago, you have to ask, with the giant leap seen with ChatGPT and its rivals, is Google about to become the new Kodak? I'm Kim Commando for ExpressVPN's ultra-secure servers that reroute my internet connection so all my data is encrypted. Get an extra 4 months free at expressvpn.com/Kim. History is replete with powerful companies that languished and failed to see big changes coming. World Book Encyclopedia could have been today's Wikipedia. Blockbuster Video was offered Netflix for pennies and turned it down. And so it is with Google's half-baked AI into searches. Try it. Compare a search on Google to see what you'll get with ChatGPT. This year is going to tell the story. Google must adapt or become as irrelevant as a dusty old set of encyclopedias. Start your day with my free newsletter. Sign up at getkim.com. Oh, remember the internet's good old days when it was a place where you could be free? Unfortunately, now we go online knowing we are being tracked. Our internet providers can see our entire browsing history. And here in the United States, they're legally allowed to sell it. That's why I use ExpressVPN. It's a virtual private network that reroutes 100% of my online activity through secure, encrypted servers, shielding it from prying eyes of my ISP and other third parties. It hides my IP address, the number identifying me online, so I can't be tracked. My online history is actually mine again. It's so easy to use that your entire family can figure it out with just one tap. ExpressVPN works on all your devices, up to 8 devices at once. Let's return to the good old days of online privacy and freedom. Get up to 4 extra months of ExpressVPN for free at expressvpn.com/Kim. That's expressvpn.com/Kim.
The Kim Commando Show, live Saturday mornings at 9. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
The Kello Hotline is sponsored by Tires, with 2 locations to make sure you have the proper traction this winter.
See why Window World of Sioux Falls doors and windows are right for you. Not only do they raise home value and curb appeal, they cut costs with energy-efficient.
Not a lot of trending stories this morning.
Best-in-class warranty. Upgrade your home now. Call 605-373-1100.
The Sioux Falls Housing and Redevelopment Commission, with Affordable Housing Solutions, provides safe, affordable housing to help residents build better futures. Learn more at siouxfallshousing.org or call 605-332-0704. Empowering people, building futures.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression. Izervay or
Robert, I've got a cup with a really small opening. So for that reason, it's one of the reasons why you see me drinking over here versus generally over here. So I try to keep, yeah, you want to keep liquids away from the board. Beautiful thing is, I'm the boss. So.
More happens in South Dakota every day than we can fit on one radio station, even Kello. That's why there's Kello.com.
with local stories, podcasts, and other exclusive content.
For more of South Dakota, go to Kello.com.
.638, cloudy skies, 37. How are you this morning? Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. Really nice to have you along. This hour brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
What's trending now?
Add them on Facebook.
Let the tweeting begin. The hashtag does that. News and views from Belf's News Gallery.
Well, the administration deporting more gang members, including child rapists and convicted killers, they're saying, to El Salvador. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced it yesterday that the U.S. has deported 17 gang members associated with Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gangs, both of which have been designated as terrorist organizations by the administration. And so Rubio, writing about this, he said, in order to keep the American people safe, President Trump designated the Tren de Aragua and MS-13 as foreign terrorist organizations. These criminals will no longer terrorize our communities and citizens. Once again, we extend our gratitude to the government of El Salvador for their unparalleled partnership in making our country safe again against transnational crime and terrorism. So this is the latest deportation. Also, I mentioned this to you a few minutes ago. It's a big story this morning. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issuing a memo yesterday ordering that men and women meet the same physical fitness requirements if they want to work in combat positions. And he said the Pentagon had allowed standards to slip. And this memo was released by the Pentagon yesterday, said, as the nature of warfare evolves and the demands on our service members grow more complex, it is imperative that we assess and refine the physical fitness standards that enable our readiness and lethality. That's Pete Hegseth. What has he talked about? Lethality. Lethality over and over again, he's talked about it. So he wrote, I'm directing the secretaries of the military departments to develop comprehensive plans to distinguish combat arms occupations from non-combat arms occupations. This effort will ensure that our standards are clear, mission-focused, and reflective of the unique physical demands placed on our service members in various roles. Also, the U.S. stock market slipping. Again, stock markets falling as the president gets ready to unveil new import taxes tomorrow. He's called it America's Liberation Day. So global stock markets also fell. This comes after the president suggested the new tariffs will hit all countries, not just those that have the biggest trade imbalances with the U.S. So Downing Street saying the UK expects to be affected by these U.S. tariffs, not ruling out retaliatory tariffs in response. The president and Britain are talking. In fact, more on that coming up here. In fact, I'll share this. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer meeting with President Trump, and they had productive negotiations toward a UK-US economic prosperity deal. This was a phone call on Sunday, according to Downing Street. So a phone call between the two leaders on Sunday. They said negotiations will continue this week, and they agreed to stay in touch in coming days, according to a statement from Downing Street. So Britain has been hoping to negotiate a deal with the U.S. to avoid a broader round of reciprocal tariffs. It's amazing. You watch these countries. What do they want to do? They want a deal. They want a deal. They want to strike deals. And this is where I think you just really have to stand firm and negotiate the best deal you can. Also, the Supreme Court yesterday seemed swayed by a Catholic charity group. They want tax relief in Wisconsin. This is in Wisconsin. And it could drastically affect eligibility for religious tax exemptions. This is a Wisconsin chapter of Catholic Charities. And that's a social services arm of Catholic dioceses across the country. And they challenged Wisconsin's determination that it did not qualify for a religious tax exemption because it isn't operated primarily for religious purposes. And a lawyer for Catholic Charities argued no court would hold the clergy members who preach on Saturday aren't ministers because preaching on Sunday is more typical, nor would a court suggest that religious leaders who help the poor aren't ministers because secular leaders help the poor too. So it appears the judges are leaning toward ruling on behalf of Catholic Charities. Clarence Thomas asked what changes Catholic Charities would have to make in order to qualify for the exemption. And so you had a typical conversation occurring between the justices, but it appears, and its appearances aren't always revealing in the case of the U.S. Supreme Court, but it appears that they may rule on behalf of Catholic Charities. Also, you've got people in South Texas who just got pummeled after about 20 inches of rain fell on the Rio Grande Valley. At least 3 people died. There was catastrophic flooding that took place. Again, we're talking about nearly 2 feet of rain. And Governor Greg Abbott directed the Texas Division of Emergency Management to request that FEMA conduct an investigation to assess the damage. And he's looking for, it appears he'll be looking for federal disaster assistance. Abbott said, they're doing everything they can, issuing help to local officials, first responders, emergency management. They're encouraging Texans to report damage to their homes, businesses, so on. So the flood damage after 20 inches of rain, you can imagine. You seen any of those photos or video? Literally, areas, you can tell where the roads are only because you see a string of vehicles, sitting in the midst of water. It's just absolutely incredible. Headquarters of the Republican Party in New Mexico was targeted over the weekend. What's being called the deliberate act of arson. The Republican Party in New Mexico, in a post on X, showed the damage to the Republican headquarters in Albuquerque, also included the words ICE equal KKK spray painted on the wall of the building. And the attack was described as being fueled by hatred and intolerance. There's a lot of that on the left. Also, 3 American soldiers, sadly, were declared deceased yesterday after crews in Lithuania retrieved the armored recovery vehicle that they had been traveling in. And it sank in a swamp last week. And so they were search and recovery efforts have been underway and apparently still ongoing for a 4th soldier. But the Army now saying these 3 U.S. Army soldiers assigned to 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team were found deceased. So the identities were being withheld pending notification of next of kin. Other stories trending this morning. Former Seattle Seahawks star Richard Sherman and his wife Ashley have both released security footage of the armed men who robbed their home while Ashley and their children were on the property. And Sherman wrote on X, he said, house being robbed at gunpoint with my family isn't what anyone wants for a birthday gift. Scary situation that my wife handled masterfully and kept my kids safe. If anyone has any info that can help find these people, please reach out. Ashley also posted video of the break-in on social media, and it shows 3 men that are breaking in through a window, and She said nobody was harmed. She said, thank you to everyone who has checked in. It is truly appreciated. The kids and I are physically okay, very shaken up. Hope to find these people soon. And she said, waking up to intruders outside your bedroom with a gun is something no one should have to experience. Boy, you can't disagree with that. And she said, like I said, they tried the wrong people. We will find you. Sherman also posted screen grabs that showed men walking into the home. They were wearing masks, heavy jackets. One of the men has a pistol. That's pretty scary stuff. You and your family, thankfully safe, but one can only imagine. Also, Jerickson Profar, as of the Atlanta Braves, has been suspended for 80 games for a PED test. This is a performance-enhancing drug test, and he failed it apparently, so he's been suspended for 80 games. Also trending this morning, there's been a pivotal breakthrough in cardiovascular medicine, and Eli Lilly is out with an experimental drug. And I think this is, a lot of folks are watching this with some interest, that the drug has demonstrated an unprecedented ability to lower levels of a certain risk factor for cardiovascular disease. And the findings were presented at the American College of Cardiology's annual meeting in Chicago, also published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And there are currently no approved treatments to lower LPA, and this might do it. It cuts genetic heart disease risk by 94%. Also, the FDA, if you are a decaffeinated coffee drinker, decaffeinated coffee, the Food and Drug Administration yesterday issued a recall on coffee grounds in 15 states. There was a mislabeling issue where decaffeinated coffee was actually caffeinated, was listed as decaffeinated. And so there's a nationwide recall that's underway. Also trending this morning, forgive me if I mispronounce her name, it's a French name. She's one of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers, Virginia, I believe Gouffroy, Virginia Gouffroy, said doctors have given her 4 days to live. She was struck in a car crash, and she posted a photo of her injured face on Instagram and explained that she had gone into kidney failure after a school bus crashed into her car at about 68 miles per hour. And she said, I've gone into kidney renal failure. They've given me 4 days to live, transferring me to a specialist hospital in urology, she says. And also, finally this morning, story trending, and some of these names, forgive me, some of these names get to be a little bit much for me. He's a figure skater. His parents died in a DC plane crash. Maxim Numov. And he said his parents were killed. This is sad. And he's out there skating, and he mouthed a few words in Russian to his parents, and he said, "This is for you guys. You guys are with me. I love you both." And he had finished fourth at nationals, already turned home since the crash. Then he's become the face of the tragedy, and a lot of people in the skating community rallying around him, and he's very grateful for that. He said, "I don't think I've walked through a hallway and haven't given a hug since. And I feel that support and love. It's been beyond anything that I could have ever even imagined. And it helps so much to get through the day. It's overwhelming," he said, "but it makes my heart so full." Pretty incredible. He's 23 years old, skated in a benefit in Washington earlier this month, raised more than 1.2 million for the victims' families. And he said, he spoke to reporters afterward, and he said, "As soon as I hit the ice, my brain just, I don't know whether it's focus or just calmness or stillness or what, but it feels like I tune everything out and I'm just talking with them and they're helping me. I don't hear the crowd. I don't hear the announcers. I don't hear anything. I just had this internal dialogue and I'm just able to almost be calm and just be in my heart." That is such an incredible story. And that's a look at the stories trending this morning in Belf's News Gallery. Thanks for starting your day with the Greg Belfrage Show. Really nice to have you along. Currently, cloudy skies, 37. This hour of the show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month. Well, thank you for being here. Please come back at 9:30 for the fourth hour. Hope to see you then. So take care. Have a great day.